Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. The application seeks outline planning permission for 39 dwellings on a site outside of the development boundary for Bressingham. The application seeks permission for the access, with all other matters reserved. The land has been identified in the emerging South Norfolk Village Cluster's housing allocations plan as the preferred site for Bressingham for up to 40 dwellings. However, this can only be given limited weight at this stage, given that it is yet to be fully adopted. As set out on the agenda, Council are currently not able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Given that only relatively limited weight can be given to the proposed VCHAP allocation, and that the proposal is outside of the nutrient catchment area and therefore does not harm a protected area, the assessment seeks to establish whether any adverse impacts of granting planning permission would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits as required by paragraph 11D of the MPPF. This is known as the tilted balance. So just to put the site and the application into a bit more context, I'll just go through the slides. So this plan shows the village cluster's allocation with the site outlined in and shaded in red. Bressingham has 2 settlement limits, both outlined in yellow here. So we've got one immediately adjacent to the north of the site and then on the opposite side of School Road. And then there's a further settlement boundary which is slightly to the east, which is made up of linear residential development. The blue line here is a parish boundary, and then this is a settlement boundary of the nearby village of Roydon. This is then a satellite plan which just shows some of the local services and facilities. So immediately opposite the application site is Bressingham Primary School, and then approximately 450 metres to the northeast is Bressingham Village Shop, Village Hall and recreation pitches. They are all accessible via footpath for the majority of the route, but are considered to be accessible. There's also infrequent but bus stops within very close proximity, within walking distance, and although not necessarily within a safe walking distance or safe walking route, within 1 kilometre of the site there's also the Chequers Public House, Bressingham Steam Museum and Gardens and Bressingham Garden Centre, which does offer the opportunity of some local employment. Moving into the satellite plan, just a zoomed in version really, but this shows the context of the immediate surrounding area. So you can see some kind of trees and vegetation along particularly the south and east boundaries of the site. You can see we've got residential development, which is a mixture of 2-storey and single-storey properties, mostly single-storey properties to the north of the site. On the opposite side of School Road, you've got some 2-storey ex-local authority properties. Then you've got the school itself, and then you've got Pascoe Place, which is more modern, small cul-de-sac of residential properties. Also to note, to the south of the site is Pine Tree Cottage, which is a Grade 2 listed building, and I'll come to that further into the slides. This is just building on that, shows the settlement boundary that I've mentioned already, the closest one. This plan also shows we've got some trees which are covered by tree preservation orders. They were the tree preservation orders were actually put on those trees during the course of this planning application due to concerns raised by the Council's Conservation and Tree Officer that there could be some future pressure on those trees. And this plan also shows those properties outlined or shaded in purple are listed buildings. As you'll see in the agenda, it's considered that the listed buildings which are further from the site, so these ones on High Road, due to the degree of separation and the intervening vegetation and built form, that there would be no harm to those properties as part of the application. The impact on the listed building which is immediately adjacent to the site, I'll come to that in a future slide. In terms of the plans that have been submitted as part of the application, this is the location plan, which just kind of repeats some of the things I've said already. You can see the built form in the immediate areas, mostly linear apart from Pascoe Place. And it's worth noting this property, which is on the corner plot, The actual dwelling is this building here. These are all outbuildings. This is the arboricultural plan. A couple of things to note on here. First of all, the contour lines, which shows the gradient of the site, which slopes from the northeast as the highest point down towards the southwest corner of the site. Hopefully that will become clearer in some of my photos. The green trees are the category A trees. They're of the exceptional quality. The blue trees are category B trees, which are of moderate value. The grey trees are those of a low quality, and then we've got this single kind of brown shaded tree which is in such a poor condition that renders it unsuitable for retention. So in terms of the impact on the trees, 27 trees were assessed as part of the application. 5 are proposed to be removed, albeit one of those is this U category tree, which would be removed in any event. The other 4 trees to be removed are these 4 trees. They're young and quite small silver birch trees, and they're category C trees as well. The council's conservation and tree officers raised no objection to the loss of those 5 trees. The arboricultural report that's been submitted with the application has said that the proposals do not necessarily need to provide replacement planting or any future planting as part of the development, but proposed planting is set out within the proposals, and therefore there would be a net arboricultural gain on the site. This is then the parameters plan, so it just gives us kind of an outline as to what is proposed. This is a plan that would be approved as part of the application. So it shows the residential form, which would be the kind of brown area here. We've then got a green area, which is kind of public green space towards the front of the site, and then you can see the access, which is something which has been approved as part of the application. In terms of the parameters plan, the allocation, the emerging allocation, requires the site layout to protect and enhance the setting of the pine tree cottage, which is to that southwest corner of the site. And that's what this parcel of land is seeking to do, to provide a buffer between the kind of residential development and that listed building. This parcel of land was originally shown to be larger and go to the full extent of the curtilage of that listed building. That also included on the illustrative plan an area of kind of children's play space. But the council's heritage and design officer had concerns with regards to the play space in that location and felt it needed to be more centrally located, and has concluded that effectively a reduced size would be absolutely fine and would still kind of meet the policy requirements of that emerging allocation, i.e. it would provide enough of a buffer, and they've raised no objection in terms of the impact on that listed building. Other points to note on this parameters plan is that the allocation also required the developer to determine the requirement for and deliverability of a school car park within the site. And this pink shaded area is doing exactly that. So the developers have explored this option and are seeking to provide it as part of the proposals. The Highway Authority have confirmed their acceptance to that, and that would be secured through the Section 106 agreement. So the full details of the car park would be set out at a later date, so we don't have the full details, but it's a car park to help the existing car park situation at Bressingham Primary School, where there are issues at pick up and drop off times. The only other point to note is that the emerging allocation did require a kind of frontage development for the residential properties. That has been looked into and explored with both the Highway Authority and the primary school by the developer, but you'll see in a moment the kind of illustrative proposed site plan doesn't have properties fronting onto School Road, but it's still considered that an acceptable scheme can be provided without having frontage development onto the road. So this is the illustrative site plan. Worth kind of just reminding everybody that that is indicative only at this stage because of the outline nature of the application. We did previously have a revised or a a different version at the outset of this application, but the council raised some concerns in terms of the layout. So this is an amended version, but the council are content that this demonstrates sufficiently that 39 dwellings could be achieved on the site. There's still a couple of tweaks that potentially could be made. For example, plot 20 is slightly too close maybe to the to one of the protected trees. But overall, it's considered that this is a kind of acceptable layout, just to kind of do what it does, what it needs to do in terms of demonstrating the numbers. You'll also see you've got the kind of parking area in the buffer zone as shown. There's lots of tree planting and vegetation to the front of the site, which kind of allows a kind of quite a soft appearance at the front of the development. The play area is now more centrally located, so better overlooked, and all of the existing trees and vegetation on the boundaries, bar that yew tree, is being retained, as well as additional planting on the boundaries to increase the kind of screening for neighbouring properties. This is the proposed access, so towards that southwest corner of the site, and the parking, school parking area is also shown on this plan. The Highway Authority have raised no objection to the access. As well as this, there's also a package of off-site highway improvement works that have been proposed. This includes localised carriageway widening along the site frontage to 6 metres, and that was one of the requirements of the emerging allocation. New pedestrian crossing facilities to the north. DDA compliant bus stops are proposed on both sides of the road to the south of the access, and a further reduction in speed limit along School Road from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. So it's considered that although the frontage development isn't proposed, the application accords with the remainder of that criteria within the emerging allocation. So just going through some site photographs. So this is on approach to the site from the south. So travelling up School Road, you can see Pascoe Place is that cul-de-sac of residential properties. You can make that out. And then Pine Tree Cottage is a listed building you can just about see. So the site isn't clearly visible due to kind of screening from kind of further down towards the south. And then as we get closer, this is Pine Tree Cottage, which is a listed building. It faces away from the application site. And the application site would be immediately to the north of that. This is then further along, so just coming, so you can see the site. You'll see that the site's western boundary is very open, so it's clear views of that parcel of land, and yeah, you can kind of see the facing north along School Road there, and then this is kind of switching round to the junction with Firstfield Road and School Road, so looking down School Road, and you can see there's some screening on that boundary, so 2-storey properties, you'd be able to kind of start to see the top of those and the rooftops. This is the access into that corner plot. This is then travelling down quite close to the site now, and you can see the school on the right hand side and some of those neighbouring properties. And the site would be just in here, obviously, as shown illustratively. There would be kind of trees and planting on that boundary. This is then looking into the site, so you can kind of hopefully make out there is a gradual slope from the northeast corner downwards, but the site fairly clear of any kind of features apart from the site boundaries. This is a couple of views from the access. So this is from the access, proposed access looking north, and then spinning round. This is from the proposed access facing down to the south. And then these are photos from within the site. So this is facing north towards those neighbouring residential properties, number of outbuildings on this boundary, but you've got some trees and screening at the start of the kind of northern boundary. And then as we move towards further east into the site, the northern boundary is those neighbouring properties have got kind of quite low hedging and kind of post and rail fences, so relatively open at the moment. So that's hence there is some proposed plans which show illustratively only at this moment in time, but show some more planting on that boundary. These are two of the oak trees which are protected, and then you might be able to make out from this photo, we've got the 4 young silver birch trees, which you can see here, which are proposed to be removed. This is then looking at the eastern boundary, and you might just be able to make out the rooftop. Here is the one of the listed buildings in the distance to the east. This is in the southern boundary. These photos were taken last week, so you can see that there are quite a lot of leaves and what have you off the trees at the moment, so it's probably showing it in its worst form, but the southern boundary would, with additional planting as well, provide some good screening from kind of wider views. This is then standing within the site looking down towards that southwest corner where you've got Pine Tree Cottage, so this is where that kind of buffer area would be. And then this is looking towards School Road, so purposely standing back into the site so I could show you the whole street view, but you've got the more modern coloured rendered properties in Pascoe Place, you've got the school in the centre, and then you've got those 2-storey ex-local authority properties further along. And I'll just leave you with the illustrative plan as well, just while I'll just conclude. So overall, the proposal will present some economic benefits both during the construction period and through the increase in future local spending. In addition, the site is considered to be in a sustainable location, would provide affordable housing provision, add to the range of homes available in the area, and provide a package of off-site highway improvement works as well as the on-site car park to help alleviate existing local parking issues. Ecological enhancements and biodiversity gains will also be provided as part of the application. Despite some localised harm to the character of the area, it is considered that the scheme could be designed in a way that wouldn't result in any significant detrimental impacts. Refusal of the application could not be justified simply due to the limited weight that could be given to the allocation at this stage. For the reasons set out, the scheme is considered acceptable in planning terms, as well as complying with the vast majority of the policy requirements of the emerging VCHAP allocation. Given the lack of harms identified, it is considered that even though the benefits outlined above would be modest, these would not be significantly and demonstrably outweighed by adverse impacts. As such, the proposals are considered to be acceptable in the context of paragraph 11 of the NPPF. Therefore, it is recommended to authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to approve the application, subject to overcoming the outstanding concerns from the Lead Local Flood Authority, the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure affordable housing provision, open space, a monitoring fee and GIRAMs, as well as a school car park provision, and the conditions set out in the agenda, which will include any to deal with the foul drainage issues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick questions. Affordable still on my mind from the beginning. Affordable percentage on here?
That's 33%, which is policy compliant. That equates to 13 properties.
And can you just, there's going to be a TRO for reducing the speed from 30 to 20. Can you just, is that the main road going up the left-hand side by the school?
It is. I don't think it shows it on the access plan. There is already an area of 20
the
miles.
School, there's an area of 20.
Yes, yeah. And my understanding is that would be increased, but it would be along School Road. We don't have the full details, but the condition would, from highways, would be something along the lines of they would need to submit the full kind of off-site highway works details to be approved at a later date.
Okay, questions? John?
Chris, on the affordable, are they in one place or peppercorn through the site?
We don't know that at this moment in time because of the outline nature of the application. So the layout is only indicative at the moment. So we don't have any kind of placings of where that would be. What would happen at the reserve matter stage is once we have a layout which is more finalised, then we would find that out at the next stage.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. First one was regards the way the image looked. Is the plum tree cottage, does that sit lower than the way the land is going to sit for the rest of the estate? Because it looked, when you did the corner on shot, it looks quite low. Or is it just deceptive of the photo?
No, I think it does. The School Road kind of drops down as you know, as you go further down to the south, and that's the lowest point of the site as well. That southeast corner. I suppose in terms of that impact, the buffer zone is there to give that degree of separation from any built form. And even after that, you're then going to have the access road. So the built form should be a good distance from it. And then even once you've then got that built form illustratively shown, we would have a kind of a dwelling towards their rear of their kind of amenity area. But it's within our power to obviously assess the acceptability of the design of that property. So that might be that would be better to be a single-storey property, for example, to again reduce any impact. So, but I would also emphasise that the council's heritage officer is comfortable with what's been submitted to date.
Okay, the other thing was also the buffer zone, is that just going to be green space? It's not no attenuation pools or anything like there as it is at the moment?
There would, as shown at the moment, again, the final kind of drainage details would need to be submitted and firmed up at the reserve matter stage as well. But at the moment, an attenuation basin is shown within that area.
Okay, will heritage officer consider that if there is an attenuation pool there, especially with a listed building?
Yeah, they have that shown on the illustrative plans at the moment. Heritage officers accepting of that.
Michael?
Okay, a couple of questions. So the first one I think is quite simple. Coming back to that school car park issue, I didn't quite understand your map. Can you show me where the school car park is going to go and how that relates? Are we proposing that any of the land for development is used for the school car park, or is it on an existing school site?
So the school car parking area would be within this development. So at the moment, there's existing problems in terms of school road being particularly blocked up at pick-up and drop-off times, which is kind of probably quite common of a number of kind of nearby to a number of schools. What this is seeking to do is to offer parents another opportunity or another option to kind of potentially come in here close to the school, park up, and then you've got a kind of pedestrian link. So you'd walk out of the car park. That's where the crossing feature is. So it would just help to alleviate some of those problems. There's been some concerns raised locally that wouldn't help the situation, but I can't see how it would worsen it. It would certainly provide another option for people.
So would the places in that car park be reserved for school use, or would they be also used by residents of the estate?
I think it would be difficult for us to kind of police that in terms of just for school. I can imagine there'd be some kind of signage that it would kind of, that would be the aim of it, but in terms of kind of blocking any other users for that, I think it would be difficult. What we would need to ensure is that the layout provides adequate parking for the residential properties. There's also at the moment shown visitor spaces as well as the kind of individual properties. So there should be enough parking elsewhere that people wouldn't need to use that. Equally, you know, most people would want to park their car close to the property rather than at the front of a site when you don't have good surveillance of it.
Thanks so much. So my second issue, again, you showed me contour lines on a map, but none of them had markings on it. So I don't understand what the complete scale of the drop is from the northeast corner down to the Pine Tree Cottage.
I don't actually have that figure to hand, I'm afraid. I mean, there is a drop in levels. That's kind of clear from the photos. I mean, as part of the layout and when we get to the kind of final design, then that would be something that would be taken into consideration in terms of kind of dwellings and their position and scale. Obviously, it might be that we need at them highest points, we might need some bungalows, for example, to help them assimilate into the development more acceptably.
I think my concern related more to the objection from the LNFA, and I'm thinking of another site that we're both familiar with, where there's been flooding caused to existing properties by an insufficient drainage scheme. And I notice that is the objection from the LNFA, so I really think that is something that I really want to see tied down really carefully in the conditions and in the agreements. So particular attention, I think, needs to be given to that. And I wonder whether it's possible to put into the condition that the drainage system must be satisfactorily installed and inspected before any further development can take place.
Oh, so in terms of the Lead Local Flood Authority's concerns, they've objected to the application, which isn't uncommon. So they've required further information, which has been provided. A number of their concerns have been addressed. The two latest concerns are more technical points to deal with, kind of greenfield runoff rates. My understanding is the Lead Local Flood Authority are generally happy with the principle of the drainage scheme, but just those issues to iron out. The recommendation is to approve subject to overcoming their concerns, so we won't be approving the application unless they're kind of coming to us saying that they're completely satisfied, and they will be, led by them to a degree in terms of wording for a condition, which would be normally something in accordance with their drainage strategy. The only other thing to note is that drainage strategy may change slightly, obviously, once we've got the final layout of the reserve matter stage.
Thank you.
So you say just two small technical issues that are outstanding, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Daniel Jones, I'm Silverley Properties Limited. We're promoting the site. Everything I think has been said extremely well. We are specialist promoters for rural village developments like this, ranging between 10 and 50 houses. The landowners, we always meet our landowners, obviously, who we work with. They were very keen to do something high quality that clearly deals with everything that's in the draft policy for the draft allocation in the village clusters plan, which we were here talking to the inspector about last week, which all seemed to go pretty well from everything I could see. So this is their sort of legacy land in this village. Their grandparents lived on the top of the corner of School Road and Church Road, so they want it to be good and something that they and the village can be proud of. So we put a lot of care, a lot of those LLFA and authority school, everything that's been going on for 18 months, and we've done a lot of consultation. We saw the school for the first time, the head and the governors, at least it must be 18 months ago, and we've tried to basically please everybody as much as you can, balancing everything up. As you've heard, highways are happy. The site is just over 2 hectares, so you've got a rate of 20 houses per hectare, which is about the right for rural rate. It's obviously below the 30 that you would normally have in more urban areas. 80% of the houses are the way we've planned it, and we think it will be that is going to be the best way to develop it. We already know a very good regional developer who likes to lay out a lot and wants to develop the site, and he's a good developer, and we work with the landowners to find the most appropriate developer, not necessarily the highest bidder, but the one who will do it right and commercially correct. So 80% of the houses are 3 beds or less. We tend towards smaller houses. You'll see we've got another scheme coming up because they're better for people to get on the ladder, and also more elderly people in the village to downsize to, freeing up family houses, etc. Obviously all the affordables are in there. It fulfills all the policies you've heard about, the listed building, protection of trees. In fact, the trees that we were already saving have now been protected, so that's obviously fine. There's a play area in the middle, so we've tried to basically suit all of the policies that are in there. Highways, I think it's also worth mentioning that our highways assess that there's about 10 dangerous current places that are parked in up School Road and along on the junctions, and with part of the highways agreement, is with them is to get those protected with double yellow lines or high curbs like there'll be down the school lane to stop people parking on the development side of the road. And all of those spaces will be replaced, and double the amount will be replaced in the school car park as proposed. So it'll become a lot safer than it is today. And at the moment, you're one-way traffic really down there, and it's going to be two-way. So that, as far as we can see, we've done everything we can to make sure that every issue or factor is improved from what is there today. And the LLFA, they will only be happy once we can satisfy them, which we believe we have with these final technical points that have gone back to them. The runoff rate will have to be less than what is there today. And it will actually, and also it can't just run off in one area as it tends to when it's, as it is at the moment. It's got to be balanced in the attenuation pond and fed out at a greenfield runoff rate. So that would be improved as well. So all in all, we think we're happy, and so the landowners, that we think we've done the best we can.
1 minute to go.
It'll be something that everybody will look back on and think that as good a job as possible has been done. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair and officers and ladies and gentlemen.
If you just wait there a second, any questions for them, you? No, you got off lightly? So if you'd like to go back to your place. Thank you. So could you go to your last slide, please, Chris, so we look at the... So just a reminder on the key issues, including 5-year land supply, which is our bugbear today. So I open up to members for any thoughts and comments. Dave, first one.
Yeah, I think the officers already shared it already. I mean, plot 20, that does look quite close, considering sort of a lot of the spacings around the rear gardens for the other plots. I think, is that something you're going to be monitoring as to where they position that when they come with the proper sort of layouts?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, there's only so far we can go in terms of different iterations of an illustrative plan, given the outline nature and the fact that the layout and appearance will be something for the reserve matter stage. But certainly at that reserve matter stage, we'll be having a fresh look at it, and that will be one of the things in terms of the impact on the trees.
John?
Do we know what the pupils, the number of pupils at the school? Is it a primary school?
It is a primary school. I don't know exact numbers. I think it's just over 100 from memory. Through the allocation stage, from speaking to the policy team, they've always been informed that there is capacity at the school. So yeah, I think ultimately, if there are any capacity issues, then I would say that that's kind of what SIL monies is for in terms of, potential future expansion and what have you. But overall, this will only serve to kind of, help the future viability of the school.
I mean, I think the allocated car parking is a great idea, but it's a question of how it gets policed, because they do get used by other people. And in my own area, when we have a primary school in a cul-de-sac, and they have a car parking separate, and it's like chock-a-block, so it's always a concern, and the road is chock-a-block as well, both sides.
Yeah, I understand the concern. I suppose one thing with this in this location is the village shop, for example, is a good way down the road, with parking outside of it, not a huge amount, but some. So there's not kind of competing, I suppose, services and stuff next to the school at those kind of times where maybe that could become more of a problem. So yeah, I'm sure inevitably there might be the odd space used, but hopefully the majority of those would still be there to help to alleviate the issue.
Because they're going to put a crossing in that will have, one either side there's a space that's yellow lined, isn't there? So that will reduce the parking on School Lane. So this is probably a good advantage. Lisa first this time, and then
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm happy with this application once again. I think listening to the agent who was speaking, a landowner, and I think there's all the conditions there, and I'm pleased to see that some of the highways ones and other ones that sort of more important ones are either prior commencement or prior sort of first people moving in, sort of thing, which is nice to see when you have infrastructure like that. And I think as it's a small, medium sort of sized site, I would hope that maybe the landowner would find a small, medium sort of builder rather than, you know, the sort of big developers that you don't get as much, if you like, character from. And I think where this is positioned, it would be nice to see that. So I'm happy with this, Chairman. Michael?
Yes, similarly, I support this application. I think again, you've understated the benefits around things like the 20-mile-per-hour limit. If that gets agreed, that's a significant improvement to people's safety in the village. The car parking improvements, the only concern I have had you've addressed, which is around the LLFA requirements. So I'm happy with this at the moment.
Thank you. So we're going to go to the recommendation, authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to approve subject to resolution of the Anglian Water and Lead Local Flood Authority issues, conditions, any updates needed following the publication of the new NPPF, and the resolution of a Section 106 agreement to secure affordable housing, open space, monitoring fee, GIRAMS and the provision of a school car park. All those in favour, raise your hand.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So, moving on. Aslacton, land north of Church Road, Aslacton.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, so this site is within the village of Aslacton. It's to the east of the village, on the northern side of Church Road, near the junction with Muir Lane, which goes up there. You'll note it's close to the village school, again, similar to what you had before, with the church a little further to the west. This site is also, that's outside the development boundary for Aslacton, is also proposed to be allocated in the village cluster's housing allocations plan, like the last two you've heard. And as you heard, that is currently subject to examination by inspector, with therefore only limited weight which can be given to this. The allocation in that plan is for approximately 35 dwellings, with vehicle access from Church Road, the delivery of a village green along the frontage of the site, including provision of land for school parking, along with the requirements for landscaping. It shows you an aerial view of the site as it currently is. So it's the site here. See, it forms part of a much larger agricultural field in arable use. Also to note, there's a public right-of-way which goes along the western boundary here and then up towards Pottergate Street. So the scheme that is proposed in this application is to deliver what the allocation seeks to achieve, albeit with one additional dwelling, so it provides 36 dwellings. This plan shows where the residential development within the site would be, within the area coloured brown, and then also where the village green would be, the parking for this available for school users there. There's also proposed to be drainage basins, attenuation basins up to the north of the site. This actually falls outside of the land which is allocated in the emerging village clusters plan. That boundary is along here. The area around the drainage basins is also proposed to be for habitat creation, such as orchard, which, along with further habitat creation along here on the western side, would help meet the requirements for the biodiversity net gain requirements. So this is the indicative site plan. Again, as with the previous one, it's an outline application with access only to be decided at this stage. So the layout and all these elements are indicative only. However, the indicative layout does demonstrate a layout that our Senior Heritage and Design Officer considers acceptable, with the sort of dwellings fronting onto the village green to give a frontage onto the village green, and then more open sort of courtyard dwelling to the north. It's noted that comments have been made about such a form of development not being compatible with the linear character of Aslacton. However, whilst other areas of the parish may have a more linear character, particularly down to the south around Sneath Common, it's considered this part of the parish is less linear overall in nature. You can see there are some small estate developments both to the west and immediately to the south of the site. It's also noted that some comments have been made questioning the provision of the parking for the school. As we've said, this is a requirement that is coming through from the village clusters, which I believe reflects an historic aspiration locally. It is within easy walking distance to the school, so therefore it will be of use to the school. But it could also be of some communal use for users such as of the village green. Just takes us through some photos now. So this is on the southeastern corner of the site, so looking at Maria Lane. If you just notice there the bus stop, which we'll come back to when we look at the access arrangements, and then Church Road goes off to the left into the village, and there's the site in that area there, and then that's looking Church Road into the village. That's the Cooper Close development on the left there, which is relatively recent, previous allocation, the previous plan. And then obviously you've got the site here, so if you remember from that indicative layout, the village green and the parking would be towards the frontage of this area here with the house development set further back. And again, this is again from the corner, but just looking further out, so you can see the site itself spanning out there, so the development will be set further back from here. And then again, this is from Maria Lanes, from the eastern boundary of the site. You can see again the Cooper Close sort of development there. The village school is over in this area here somewhere, and then you've got the development on the western boundary there. So again, you'd have the sort of the open elements of the site, the village greener things in the area to the front, and then housing in this area here. Looking back along Church Road, again, the Cooper Close development on the right there. So Maria Lane is along here where those trees are, and then the site there. And then finally in the photos, this shows the western boundary, so that's that development on the northern side of the Church Road, immediately to the west of the site. Concerns have been raised about access in the local highway network. As we said, the policy requirements for access from Church Road, that's been provided for here. Also, in terms of policy requirements, is the requirement of a 2 metre footway to go along the site frontage, and then around to connect to that bus stop, if you remember from the photo, and also some carriageway improvements there. So there's been some proposed to be some carriageway improvements to the carriageway alignment. Highway Authority have considered the proposal and are satisfied with the access arrangement, and do not raise any concerns with the ability of the wider local highway network to accommodate the development. Therefore, we consider that there are no grounds in which to refuse this on highways terms. So to sort of sum up, so it's therefore considered that this scheme does demonstrate that 36 dwellings can be accommodated satisfactorily on the site, which broadly does comply with the level of development set out in that emerging policy. It provides for fully compliant affordable housing at 33%, and also provides for the requirements for the provision of that village green and car parking that will be offered to the village school. The access arrangements are considered satisfactory, whilst the provision for surface water drainage, landscaping and habitat creation proposed are all considered acceptable. It's noticed that there has been some issues raised about foul water disposal. I think this relates particularly to an issue with the pumping station in the village. We consider these issues that is obviously set out in your report about these issues can be addressed, which we would say largely to the extent the responsibility of Anglian Water to resolve, and we're considering exactly how best to do this subject to the legal advice we received. So whilst it is the case that the inspector's examination into the village clusters plan and therefore this allocation is yet to be completed, given the lack of a 5-year housing land supply, it is not considered that there are any significant and demonstrable impacts that outweigh the benefits of delivery of housing proposed. And so in this context, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the various provisions in your report.
Thank you, Tim. Just quickly, I was just looking in the report, and the district councillor has mentioned the density. Is the density within our?
Yes, so the density is around 20 dwellings per hectare within the residential area, which is it's actually just slightly under the minimum GRP thing. So I think in the context of the local area, I think that's an appropriate density.
Questions, members? Questions only? Dave?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think similar response, a question regards the district council sort of comment, and I don't know whether you'll know the data. There was a comment that perhaps all houses wouldn't sell. Are there any houses in this area that aren't selling? I.e., is there a shortage of housing in the area, or an overabundance of housing that isn't being sold?
I understand there have been some houses in the Cooper Close development which, for whatever reason, have taken a while to sell. But I mean, obviously, we've got to take into the wider context of the fact we have a clear identified need for housing and the housing and supply shortage. So,
Is that a material reason?
No, I think you have clearly evidence basis in terms of the housing need that's one set by government in terms of the targets that we have to deliver, and then we've got a strategy in terms of delivering small village cluster sites to help support the vitality and viability of existing communities. So that strategy is obviously established and obviously be going through examination, and you've got a broad requirement and need for housing delivery demonstrated by your lack of 5-year housing land supply.
Any more questions? No, so we're going to go into public speaking, and I've got Janine from the Parish Council. Hello, Janine. You've been waiting patiently. I hope we haven't been boring you. So we're going to give you 5 minutes. We'll warn you with 1 minute to go. And when you turn on the microphone, please give your name for the record.
My name is Janine Jarrett. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Aslacton Parish Council on this outline planning application of a 36 property housing estate applied for by Silverley Properties, the agents for the owner of this field. I would like to backtrack on all of this. South Norfolk District Council Planning, when considering their village cluster scheme, identified out of the 3 proposed areas that this site would be their preferred site, up to 25 dwellings on a site of 1 hectare. Also stated that to be consistent with the aims of the village cluster housing allocation, it has proposed only 1 hectare of the promoted site is allocated for development. The proposed allocation would comprise of the western half of the promoted site immediately adjacent to the current linear development. At this time, it appears that South Norfolk District Council Planning are looking at going against their own directive regarding this site, and I ask the question why. Notwithstanding the history over the last 5 years of the failure of the old parish council to not fully consult with the residents in all of this, but to throw ideas at Silverley Properties that it would be good to have a village green, a shop, a village hall, a proper bus stop and school parking. This has enabled Silverley Properties to jump up to 36 dwellings with the carrot of a village green and school car parking. There was a public meeting where 120 residents turned up, which turned into a bun fight. As you would have read, parents would not allow their children to use the village green as it is on the far side of the village and is not deemed secure by them. Plus, who would maintain it? Turning to the school car park offer, following a closed meeting at the school between the parents and Silverley Properties, parents have said they will not use the car park. The car park offer is a red herring. Nothing can be built in this area due to a high pressure Anglian water pipe, and it will be used by all, including the residents. As mentioned in the Parish Council's objection dated 7th May, this development is contrary to the current National Planning Policy Framework, which refers to promoting healthy and safe communities, and planning decisions should aim to achieve healthy, inclusive and safe places which promote social interaction. Currently, as the application stands, it does not meet this criteria regarding rural isolation. The site is remote, limited public transport, limited social infrastructure, poor digital connectivity, limited access to essential services, for example, healthcare, education and employment, economic challenges due to private transport costs, which all link to the social isolation. The only facilities in Aslacton is the primary school and the church. This naturally leads on to highway safety of at least a minimum of 72 residents, leading to 72 cars using single track roads, which are 60 miles per hour, into this site from whichever direction they travel. This additional 144 daily car movements will place pedestrians, walkers and horses in danger. Denny Ecological latest report. This report does not deal fully with the flora, fauna and negative impact on the wildlife
A minute to go.
that the damage caused by this possible housing estate will cause. Let us not forget also this height is on top of a hill. So the negative visual impact it will have upon a rural village will be completely detrimental. Recently, Broadland District Council had the sense to refuse a similar application on this basis, but also on the basis no pavements exist. No pavements exist here. Right. Tory's latest missive regarding Anglian Water's objection. Last week at the Planning Inspectorate, South Norfolk District Council Planning referred to Anglian Water's objection as a technical hitch. Anglian Water's objection states that it relates to the foul water network and capacity constraints. Oh, hang on. When it rains heavily in Aslacton, raw sewage rises up from Anglian Water's foul sewage pipes as the system cannot cope and historically has not for many years and will not do so until 2030, which is why Anglian Water object to this application. This housing estate will create a greater problem with regard to the raw sewage that comes up in the village. The fact that this meeting is just 5 days after the Planning Inspectorate makes one wonder whether South Norfolk District Council Planning are only paying lip service to the objections of Aslacton villagers and Aslacton Parish Council. I will close our objection now, but we all need to consider very carefully the impact of a housing estate of 36 houses on not only the rural location of the village, but on the raw sewage and the highways concerns. Thank you.
We're applying it, and yeah, I think that's the main one.
Just to clarify, and I know we have recently updated members on this, we clearly do have a number of challenges across the entire Anglian Water region with concerns being raised around capacity. We have taken into account legal advice provided. Just in terms of matters of principle, Anglian Water do have a statutory duty under the Water Industry Act to effectually drain their area, and they have a requirement to allow connections into their network. They cannot object on the basis of capacity. It's their statutory responsibility to provide necessary upgrades and to allow connections to their service. Therefore, clearly it is a challenge for Anglian Water in terms of addressing when developments come forward and ensuring those upgrades happen, but it certainly is a responsibility of Anglian Water to do so. As you've seen in the report, we are looking at whether or not we should impose conditions. Now, that won't follow what Anglian Water are suggesting, and the legal advice certainly suggests that we should be looking at whether or not conditions are necessary, because the NPPF tells us that we should rely upon existing statutory functions and we should not replicate that. That is paragraph 201 of the NPPF. But we are looking at whether or not we should impose some conditions that give a reasonable opportunity for Anglian Water to facilitate and install those upgrades. We certainly don't obviously want to exacerbate or create any situations, but it is for Anglian Water to plan for and deliver those necessary improvements within a reasonable period to do so. Thank you.
Right, so we've covered that off, the responsibility and the timescale. Yeah. Gents, any questions of Janine? No? Thank you. If you'd like to take your place again, Janine. And we've got Daniel. Now, just to clarify, because we've got you down as the applicant, are you the agent or the applicant? Promoter.
Yeah, same.
That's a nicer word.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, sorry.
So you've got 5 minutes to go. We'll warn you with 1 minute and then come to your conclusion, please.
Yeah, so Daniel Jones, Sylvie Properties Limited. Thank you, Chair, Councillors, everybody. Again, we specialise in trying to get these types of developments. This one, we've got more room to play with than we had at Bressingham, if I put it that way. And the landowners, we at the beginning, we said to them, look, this is at the moment, it was actually less than a hectare with 25 houses sandwiched onto it, which would have been a real housing estate. And cut a long story short, we got to a point with them where they were willing to use 5 times the amount of land area, so 3 hectares instead of 0.6 of a hectare, for an uplift of 11 houses, which sounds absolutely crazy, but they were happy to do that to make this something. Again, this is their last bit of land in the area. Nina Caputo and Loretta Day, there's an interesting history as to how the land came to them, and they want it to look as good as it possibly can. There's a huge amount of work gone into this, liaising with all the bodies involved. The history, we did liaise very carefully with the parish council at the time. We did go to that public meeting. I took my whole team with me, all the consultants, so they could speak to the specialists. And yes, it started off it was 4 hours. We were basically in there. But we went through it. It was a very useful exercise. And by the end of the meeting, we definitely made progress. And the conclusion from the village back to the district council via the parish council was that they much preferred this to the 25. They may not have wanted development at all. I'm not trying to put words in their mouths, as a lot of areas. But if they were going to have, well, they knew they were likely to have development because of the allocation in the plan. But they wanted this with more space than a housing estate with 80% of the houses anyway. So I think it's good that landowners have been willing to do that. We want to lock in the village green. So they want to lock in the village green. They want a good suds area, orchard. There'll be permissive paths, which means people can walk up the public footpath on the left-hand side, along the top on a permissive path, round the landscaping area, so there'll probably be another half-mile walk. The bus stop becomes DDA compliant, moves further, closer to the junction. There's a 2-metre footpath the whole way from the school, which only this landowner can provide along the bottom of the site to the bus stop. And people from the development will be able to walk through the little car park for the school or public to it. Cooper's Yard has got issues with highways, which they haven't been able to solve. Highways have been, I would imagine, tearing their hair out. We've solved all of that by doing this. Coming back to some of the other points, demand for houses, Brown & Co are very confident this is going to be a beautiful place to live, stunning part of the village. There won't be many developments like this in the country. It's a great opportunity. Covered that. I'm just trying to think of the things that the council raised. Anglia Water, yeah, I think you've heard about that. We weren't at a school meeting. I just spoke to the headmistress a number of times. We weren't at a closed meeting. She just came back and said she'd consulted who she could and felt that it would be beneficial. So obviously that's what we've done. The layout is, yes, indicative, but we've locked in the key things, as I've said. The village is slightly linear, but there is depth, as the planning officer said, and the conservation officer wanted us. He thinks it's very important to bring heart to these villages, so you actually do get a bit more depth where there already is a line that's going in that way, and that village green will integrate the development with the village and give it a heart. And it is obviously close to the school and close to the church. It's only 10 metres from Long Stratton, 10 minutes from Long Stratton and the A140. The inspector seemed, again, like Bressingham, very positive about the site, didn't raise anything negative. 1 minute, yeah. A lot of history, big percentage of smaller houses again, 70% are 3 beds or smaller, so same points as I said about Bressingham. The built space is less than 25% of the 3 hectares. Bus stop I've mentioned, permissive paths. The BNG and habitats, the BNG is, we're going to meet the regulations plus 50%. So there's going to be a huge amount more green than there is on an arable field today. It's grade 3 agricultural land and will meet all the nutrient neutrality standards on site. So again, the landowners and we feel we've done the very best we can to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do and a lot more. And we think it'll be a development that people will look back on and hopefully want to show off as a way of doing a rural development really well in a village. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, you're going to be asking about the sewage, Dave, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Good, okay. So, yeah, again, just to say, have you done, it's obviously really early stage, isn't it? How many of those houses are you expect to be family houses where there'll be additional children living that might be of school age?
It works out about 10 primary school children would be expected on 36 houses. Yeah, we based that on other sites that you've been dealing with, and Bressingham was 10.9. So 10 children that would go to the school, and the school has places. And obviously, the more children that come from the local area, the better.
Yeah, thank you.
Dave?
No, one will be for officer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a submission from Suzanne Wateridge, who's the District Councillor for the Bonwell Ward. Firstly, my apologies for not being able to attend today. I know this is an application that the Parish Council and residents in Aslacton feel strongly about, so I am glad it has come to committee and that I am able to contribute my thoughts. On the face of it, I think the scheme has some elements to recommend it, which I outlined in my original submission last May, but I will briefly repeat those now. While I do feel there are too many properties squeezed onto the site, I am pleased to see the correct proportion of affordable housing. I would always like to see more. However, there are not enough 1 and 2 bed properties. We need more of this size of properties in the area. The larger properties are not selling and are sitting empty, such as those in Cooper's Close opposite. I think that the village green creation is an excellent idea, as Aslacton does not currently have any recreational spaces in the main part of the village where children can play and gather. It would also be a good way of integrating families from the new development into the village and provide an attractive street frontage. However, the practicality of this need to be considered. How will it meet the roadside and be protected from this? And will there be any playground equipment? The biodiversity net gain elements incidentally seem promising on the face of it, but the ecology officer's comments should be adhered to, with particular regard to the mature hedgerow and trees on the eastern boundary of the site, which must be protected. When it comes to the local primary school provision, some new housing and families would be welcomed. I mentioned in my initial report that I had spoken to Executive Deputy Head Laura Turk at Aslacton Primary, just a couple of minutes walk away, and she confirmed that despite what people may have heard, the school was still very much undersubscribed. I confirmed that it is still the case when I spoke to her this week. The school would be grateful for new families. However, despite these benefits, there are 2 very clear reasons to object to this development, in my opinion. The first relates to highways. The proposed vehicle entrance to the development is completely inappropriate. It is already dangerous enough turning out of Church Road into Muir Lane, whether you are turning right or left. The same applies to vehicles turning into Church Road from Muir Lane. There is not enough of a turning circle for larger vehicles without going into the incoming traffic side of the road. Crucially, there is no speed limit on Muir Lane, and there are 2 bus stops which will cause further problems if they are not relocated, particularly the one on the southbound stretch of Muir Lane. The deputy head confirmed to me that it is already chaotic on Church Road at drop-off and pick-up times, and the location of this driveway is going to make that even worse, with cars potentially backing up onto Muir Lane, making it incredibly dangerous. Add to this is the lack of footpath access to the school on both sides of Church Road, and you have a recipe for disaster. My second objection is the issue of drainage and sewerage, which has been addressed by Anglian Water's objections. As I'm sure the Parish Council will tell you today, Aslacton is already subject to overwhelmingly poor surface water drainage and sewage issues that have been for some years. With an ever worsening climate crisis, we know that flooding will become even more of an issue. While I appreciate from reading the correspondence between different parties that Turley, on behalf of Silverley, are really trying to get Anglian Water to address the issue, I do not think this application should be approved until they do. As we know, planning conditions are not always adhered to, and as Lacton residents cannot endure a situation where this housing development goes ahead and the sewage issues still haven't been resolved. To me, this is an overwhelming reason to reject the application in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you. The one point at the end we dealt with already on the Anglian Water thing.
I think it's fair to note, just in terms of visiting that in relation to those comments, clearly there are existing challenges with both surface and foul water in the area. New development cannot be required to address existing problems, so that's a matter of principle. What the development must do is ensure one doesn't address or cause any flooding off-site or elsewhere, and doesn't cause any flood risk. And secondly, in terms of the foul drainage, that it addresses those requirements. And as I've already set out, one, in terms of the foul water, that is a requirement of Anglian Water, and we're looking at whether or not we should sort of double up with conditions. And certainly in terms of the surface water that's covered in the report in terms of the appropriate surface water matter. So I think both of those are addressed, and we can't address existing problems.
Thank you. So we go out to public speaking. Members, Dave, you to start?
Yeah, Chair, sorry, I know Tracy spoke about it. That's regards the foul water and the sewage side of it. I've just been looking into it. I kind of feel we perhaps need to have some stronger condition on there. The data that's available currently over 3 years, 2022 there was 16 spills in that area into the Tas. And I know there's a lot of things looked at recently about E. coli in rivers and all that sort of stuff, which are levels increasing. Then on to 2023, clearly something's changing there, because 66 spills from that area into the Tas, totalling 1,150 hours of sewage spillage into the Tas in that area. There's numerous reports on from various sources of sewage coming up through drainage areas as far back as it going lately into 2024. Obviously we're in a winter season at the moment, so I haven't seen anything new, but there are valid concerns regards the sewage in that area, and I appreciate it's not the developments to fix, but it's evident that Anglian Water aren't doing things, and I think that's why we perhaps feel we need a stronger condition on this to effectively not only protect those that are there, but the newer residents aren't going to want this either, and do we end up with a site that becomes non-viable because of sewage issues?
Tim, can you just remind us in terms of the comments of Anglian Water? So the issue is around the pumping station, is that correct?
Yeah, one of the main issues I understand is the site there's a sewage goes down here to a pumping station somewhere down here around the corner, and there's an issue with that pumping station that surface water and groundwater get into it. So whilst it should have capacity, because it's getting overloaded by that, which is so if that. But that needs to be fixed, so that they would then have capacity to be able to deal with it if that groundwater and surface water wasn't getting into it.
So I would just reflect on that in terms of, so there is a statutory responsibility of Anglian Water. We have suggested, so we are just taking some further legal advice around a condition, and that would be a reasonable period for Anglian Water in which to address that issue. Now, as I said, I totally understand where you're coming from. We can't use this development to address an existing issue that Anglian Water have. If it's reneging on its statutory and lawful responsibilities in terms of overspill into the system, that's clearly a matter between the Environment Agency and Anglian Water. this development can't seek to address that situation. But I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of whether this exacerbates that. I think a condition proposed in terms of understanding from all parties a reasonable period for that to happen, so that we can understand what needs to happen, and notwithstanding Anglian Water's funding programme, whatever else, what is a reasonable period for those upgrades to happen, and a condition imposed to prevent occupation until that period has elapsed, I think would be an appropriate solution in relation to also having regard to Anglian Water's statutory responsibilities.
Yeah, I think that'd be something suitable, because we're looking 2 years and they still haven't fixed whatever the problem is. And I think, yeah, putting some, if it's possible to put a condition on where they've got to find a solution. I suppose it doesn't necessarily have to be put in place, but they've got to demonstrate a solution before effectively that they can have those houses, because otherwise we're just going to make it worse.
I would just kind of urge caution to that. So that's obviously you've got a private water company who are funded and responsible for upgrading and draining their area. What we can't do is put conditions on that put the entire control on Anglian Water and their business plan. So they may choose never to do that upgrade works, and that's not an appropriate condition to one, we have no control as a local authority, and two, the developer has no control to affect that happening, and that wouldn't meet the tests of conditions. So the control has to come back to the local authority in terms of what is a reasonable period for that to happen, and equally it's for Anglian Water to demonstrate what those improvements works and necessary are in relation to their existing issues. So we have asked for delegated authority to resolve this. I can assure you that we are certainly looking at each of these specifically in relation to that come up today to ensure that we get the right balance of that condition, but also relying upon the statutory responsibilities of Anglian Water. I totally get that there are challenges because we can't make Anglian Water do something, and we can't have a condition that requires that to do that either. Well, I think that's one of the things we're looking at. What is that reasonable period? And we obviously haven't fixed that point yet, because we need to better understand actually what needs to happen for that improvement to take effect, and what is a reasonable period for Anglian Water. Should they kind of commence from day one? How long practically would it take for them to do those works? So we certainly want to have some further conversations with Anglian Water on that. Two, we may take some information advice from the drainage consultant from the applicant, because clearly they've got practical and commercial experience around that, and then we will need to kind of look at what is a reasonable period from a local planning authority perspective.
More? So we go to the recommendation. We'll go to the recommendation: authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to approve, subject to conditions, the purchase of nutrient credits, any updates needed following the publication of the new NPPF, and the resolution of a Section 106 agreement to secure GIRAM's affordable housing provision and open space. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So move on to number 5, Keswick and Intwood. When you're ready, Helen.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So a slightly different application here for a barn conversion. Members may well remember that we had the application for the wedding events earlier on in the year at committee. That's on the land to the south here, and this application is for a barn conversion to the north. you obviously know we've got the A47 running to the south there, and we've got Keswick Hall here, which is a residential development with some commercial element. We've got a listed building over here, and this is non-designated historic parkland surrounding that. Now, we'll just go through that. Just gives you a bit of a wider context in terms of the mapping below the elements. And this is the application before us, which is just for the barn conversion. So the weddings are in this area to the south, which are limited to 6 in any 1 year. And that's just for information in terms of what we approved in terms of the weddings. Okay, the building was granted consent in 1994, and it is proposed to convert that to a dwelling. We've also got a cage for a cat at the bottom here, and we're using the existing access of Keswick Hall Road. The building itself is fairly utilitarian in nature. It's not of historic or traditional construction. As I said, it was granted consent back in 94. So the application that we have before us is for a reduced scheme. We've had 2 refusals on the site. They were refused because being contrary to our conversion policy DM 2.10, poor connectivity, the impact of the design, large curtilage on the immediate area, and non-compliance with nutrients and GIRAMs. So we've got a reduced scheme here, using largely the same footprint as what we've got existing. There is a small porch area added and some dormer windows. This is the previous scheme that we refused, which was a much larger scheme with extensions. Now, in terms of the, there's just some photographs of the building as well, so you can see it's a relatively modern construction. There we go, and there's the cat cage. In terms of the principle, it's outside the development boundary, so we go back to our, have we got any policies which would allow such a development. We do have a conversion policy, DM 2.10. This proposal does fail to meet those the criteria of that policy. The main issues are that policy only permits conversion of historic and traditional constructed buildings. It's much tighter than the wording of the NPPF. There's also a requirement to demonstrate that it could have a commercial purpose, such as a holiday let or another commercial use. So it doesn't meet that policy. Obviously, we've, in terms of the GNLP, we also have policy 7.5, which permits dwellings outside the settlement boundary for self-build purposes. They need to be adjacent to the existing development boundary. That's not the case in this, so it doesn't meet that policy in terms of 7.5. There are other exemptions in terms of Class Q, prior approval applications for barn conversions. This has been looked at extensively, and because of how the building's currently been used, it doesn't meet those criteria in terms of Class Q, and is quite a strict set of criteria. Obviously, as you've heard with the other applications, we can't currently demonstrate a 5-year land supply. So what we have to do with this application as well is engage that tilted balance. Now, in terms of economic benefits, there are some small economic benefits in terms of construction, use of facilities and services in the area. They're obviously quite modest. In terms of the design, obviously the large extensions, etc., have been removed. The curtilage has been reduced, and we feel that impact is now acceptable. Obviously, in residential amenity terms, there's 2 kind of key issues here. It wouldn't necessarily affect any residential properties within the vicinity of the site. Obviously, having the weddings in close proximity, the applicant has agreed that we would tie those weddings to the occupier of the barn, because obviously having that separate could cause an issue. And we are some distance now from the A47, so any kind of noise mitigation from the A47 can be dealt with by condition in terms of types of windows, etc. It's also proposed as a self-custom build dwelling. The applicant has had input into the design of this dwelling. That's obviously a benefit in terms of the balance, because we can't currently demonstrate our requirements under the Self-Build Act. So that again is a modest benefit, along with the provision of a dwelling when we can't demonstrate a 5-year land supply. In terms of one of the other key social aspects is the, you can see here, as we just go past some of the views, it's fairly well screened. The gates are not part of this application, so there's limited impact on the wider area. Obviously it's accessed via Keswick Court Lane, and via this, the access becomes access only for vehicles at this point here, but the highway officer is fine in terms of the actual access of the site. In terms of the connectivity, obviously it is remote from the development boundary. There is a bus service which runs from Keswick Hall twice a day, Monday to Friday, so it leaves at 10:45 and 2 p.m. and goes into the city, and on to one of the buses goes on to Heartsease as well. And then in terms of returning buses, there's one from St Stephen Street at 10:25 and 13:20. So there is a bus service within close proximity. There's also, and the next bus stop is on the main sort of B1113, where there's quite a frequent bus service there every sort of half an hour into the city. But you would obviously have to walk up Keswick Hall Lane to get there, or go to the park, and you can also walk over to the park and ride, which is just here. So in terms of its connectivity, there is an element of harm, but it's not completely an unsustainable location. We've also, in terms of that harm, we also have considered that actually class Qs or barn conversions generally don't have to demonstrate a sustainability element, because they're already there. So although that doesn't quite meet that, there has been some consideration in there, and the fact that actually it is next to a development of quite a considerable number of houses as well, just in terms of that balance. Obviously, in terms of the landscape, it is in the bypass protection zone, and in the cones of vision. In terms of landscape protection policies, you can't see the development from the A47, and it is already there. So that harm is quite limited in terms of additionality, and it's acceptable. The amended design also reduces that impact. Obviously, in terms of the listed buildings and the designated or non-designated parkland, again, the development is quite separate from that. Is already there. The building's already there, so that there isn't any harm really to the setting of those heritage assets. We therefore come back to really the planning balance. Obviously, there are some modest benefits in terms of the economic benefits of the proposal. Obviously, social benefits in terms of self-build and housing delivery, and some potential ecological enhancements as well. Obviously, there is an element of harm in terms of the connectivity, but in this instance, given that the building's there, that we feel that these would not outweigh the benefits, don't outweigh the harms, and would recommend approval in this instance. And we feel that the reasons for approval has been addressed. Obviously, you'll note that the recommendation is subject to obviously the nutrient credits, etc., being purchased, and Section 106 being agreed.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Questions only? Michael?
Yes, could you tell me what the ecological enhancements are?
Sorry. They would be conditions, so we'd be looking to achieve a hedge along the southern boundary, bird and bat boxes within the sites as well. So they would be modest benefits.
And could you also, you've said modest economic benefits. Could you give me a value of the economic benefits in the context of the overall economic activity of the South Norfolk area?
We wouldn't calculate or ascribe it in that way. I think we would say limited economic benefit from.
I think I'd say insignificant, actually.
The weight that you weight, or the weight you want to give to that, obviously, is for a member to determine as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one thing I just noticed on here on the objections from the environmental quality team, that subject to application does not secure that the permitted wedding adjacents or 4.4 not carried out by occupiers of land. That's not in the conditions though. Is that something we've put your weight to? Or if it's not, if it is in the conditions, it's not clear.
It will be a legal agreement because we're tying an existing use. We'll have to do that via legal agreement rather than by condition.
Sorry, does that mean it might not be agreed?
It will be agreed, otherwise the application would come back to you. But the applicant is already is aware of this and is happy to sign the agreement.
So it just means we will be securing the Section 106 prior to the grant of any planning permission.
So we've got some permitted development classes, no permitted development on there. What about caravans and things that surround it? Would there be a condition that those had to go?
The caravan would be permitted during the construction work, but we could seek a condition for the removal of the caravan after that point. Obviously, the purpose is they're living in it at the moment and they want to live in the barn, but we could require a condition if we felt necessary.
The house is built.
Yeah, it would have to be once the house was completed.
We've taken away the permitted development rights on a number of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we go into public speaking, and the first person I've registered is Mark.
Chair, would you mind if the owner speaks first and then I'll follow?
No, we'd rather do it this way.
Sorry, it's the agent and the applicants, they'd be sharing the 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, they can share your 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my little friend can share 5 minutes as well.
She does all that.
So that's Kerry.
That's right.
Kerry.
Okay. 5 minutes. We'll warn you with.
First.
Yeah, we'll warn you with 1 minute to go. As soon as you start to speak, please give your name.
Of course. God, that was hopeful. I said good morning, members. Good afternoon, chair and members. My name's Mark Turner. I'm here representing Mr. and Mrs. Hood. Mrs. Hood will be speaking after me in support of this application. Bluntly, you're probably tired of hearing today, but it is a fact that you don't have a 5-year housing land supply. The tilted balance does apply. Something that's maybe not been impressed upon you is it creates a presumption in favour of granting permission unless any adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. In this case, there are no such impacts, but that's a really high bar to overcome. One of the differences here with all the applications that you've seen before is This is a self-build. Beyond the general housing, there is a chronic shortage of self-build and custom plots in this district. The council has a statutory duty to meet the demand on its register, a demand that it can't currently meet. Crucially, this development is immediately deliverable. In other words, every application that you've dealt with today, those houses may be deliverable at some point towards your 5-year housing land supply. This one, they want to get in before Christmas. So there's no doubt about it, it's immediately deliverable. Of course, the key benefit here is it utilises previously developed land. The government is clear that decisions should give substantial weight to the value of using suitable brownfield. The barn's there, it's there, it's available. It has a very strange section 106 that the council imposed upon it that prevents it being used for commercial. So what else can it be used for? The design has evolved, as you can see from the previous ones. It's been shrunk, there's been considerable dialogue with the officer. I think you'll see now you've got a considerably smaller and more appropriate scheme before you. There will be legal certainty. We have already suggested the Section 106 agreement. I think I've probably said enough. I want to make sure that the owner gets time to speak. So if I pass on to Kerry. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kerry Hood, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak today. I'd like to briefly explain how we came to be on our land, as it gives important context to our application. During COVID, our wedding business effectively stopped overnight, and like many in the events industry, we were left with significant stock we could not use, storage fees we still had to pay, and a business that at the time could not be sold or operated. At the time, we were facing the reality we could no longer afford to maintain a mortgage alongside a business that had become, through no fault of our own, financially unviable. We did not want to sell our home in Little Melton. Spencer's dad had helped us build it, and it held deep family significance. Sadly, he passed away 6 years ago, and the thought of losing that home and the memories attached was heartbreaking. However, with children at school, it was essential for us to remain in the area, and we needed to find a way to relieve the financial pressure whilst keeping our family and business afloat. Finding somewhere that we could accommodate our family and our animals was proven extremely difficult. On many occasions, we nearly gave up, and at the very last moment, we saw a barn had come up for auction. Spencer's dad, Bertie, did not own the land, but he built the barn. He was incredibly proud of it, of how solid it was, how well it had been constructed, and often told us it would never fall down. We hope. So with Bertie's advice ringing in our ears, we approached the owner, explained our situation and the personal connection to the barn through Spencer's dad. He made the decision to withdraw it from auction, which allowed us to sell our house and purchase the barn to relieve our financial pressure. For us, the site is not simply a building or a parcel of land. It's been our home for the past 5 years. It's where we've continued to raise our children, care for our animals, rebuild our livelihood, and create new memories while still feeling close to someone we lost. Hence why we've called it Bertie's Barn, so I'll nod to him. We understand that planning decisions must be made on policy grounds, and we fully respect that personal circumstances cannot override these considerations. However, we hope the committee can see this application comes from a place of long-term stewardship,
1 minute to go.
not short-term gain, and from a genuine need to sustain a home and a livelihood that already exists on site. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, well timed. Questions of Mark and Kerry? Any questions? No, thank you. If you'd like to take your place again, please. So we have no other registered speakers, so we're into members' comments, and if you look up on the top again, we've got the key considerations, and again, the one that's the big one that's not up there is the 5-year land supply. So open to members for comments. John.
Chairman, it is a fine line, as our planning officer presentation said, but on balance, I'm happy to support.
David?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's good to see that the design's changed a bit, so it's more within the footprint, so I'm quite pleased with that. It is fine and balanced, but I'm happy with that. I think I'd be more happy if we did condition that the static caravan was moved once it's complete. That's my only concern, really.
Can we do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key issue for me is just that we are, hamstrung by the lack of supply and the fact that this meets a benefit we need to deliver. I'm not overly happy with the proposal otherwise, but I can see that as we've been advised, the officers, the benefits do outweigh
I think moving from that old building to the new building, I can see it's a big benefit in my eyes in that area. An interesting question. Was the A47 zone there in 1994? Probably not, was it? Because it's in the zone now, but this would have been
I
Mm,
wouldn't
predated.
like to say, obviously, it was, whether it was established part of the JCS, which was after that, I don't know whether there was any controls in 1994, but certainly when the joint core strategy was introduced in 2011, later, those couple of years after that, fully adopted, then that's when it certainly has been established in that. But obviously that seeks to ensure that we don't overdevelop the settlements up to the A47 and create that sort of hard line for the setting of Norwich. Obviously we have got an existing building when that's material to our consideration today.
Yeah. So, members, we're going to go to the recommendation. Authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to approve, subject to the conditions, the purchase of nutrient credits, signing of a 106 agreement linking the wedding business to the occupiers of the dwelling, securing the dwelling as self-build, JARAMs and compliance with habitat regulations. All those in favour, raise your hand.
Reconditioning the static caravan.
And the removal of the
sorry.
caravan.
That would be, I don't know how many there are.
Condition number 14, Chair.
Condition number 14. So, thank you.
Can we just vote on that just completely? Sorry, I think we missed.
Oh, sorry. I thought we'd voted.
Sorry, that's
It's been a
unanimous,
long
Chair.
day. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we go to planning appeals. Do we want to note that and then turn that off?
I would just note the appeal. So you've got one that's just been received, and then you've got an appeal dismissed, which was in relation to the setting of listed buildings, which the inspector found in our favour and obviously dismissed the appeal. So just to note those. Obviously we are circulating appeal decisions for members to fully read. Thank you.
Yeah, as chair, yeah, and to pass on to those who deal with that, yeah, it's very good. Thank you.